60 Minutes, Rewind.
Buried in that fine print is $70 billion, give or take $1 billion or two. It's one subject members of Congress don't like talking about: earmarks. The $70 billion covers just this year's crop of earmarks. Earmarks designate money for a multitude of hometown projects that may also benefit lobbyists and the industries they represent. Most of them are buried in the fine print of legislation and are seldom debated. Many say they're one of Congress's dirty little secrets. That a good part of that $70 billion is pork, government waste at its worst. Past examples include the $223 million bridge to nowhere in Alaska, which almost got approved, and $500,000 for a teapot museum in North Carolina, which did. Our story's about one congressman's mission to end earmarks that's pitted him against the House, in particular against members of his own party.
Everyone bears some blame here, but Republicans are going to be blamed disproportionately. And I have to say we deserve it because we've been in charge.
Jeff Flake is a conservative Republican congressman from Arizona. On weekends at his home outside Phoenix, you can find him on the trampoline with his kids.
We can't be doing this.
Back in Washington, you'll find him on the floor of the House trying to bounce some earmarks out of the federal budget, but with much less success.
This process of challenging earmarks on the floor is often described as tilting at windmills. So I suppose it's only proper that we start today with an earmark for the wind demonstration project.
He challenges $6 million for windmills to generate power on military bases.
Renovations to the city-owned pool.
$500,000 for a swimming pool in Banning, California.
I don't know why we ought to give the federal taxpayer a bath every time somebody wants a swimming pool.
He challenges $1 million to promote tourism in Kentucky. $750,000 for a new building at the Los Angeles County Fair. $1.5 million for a William Faulkner Museum in Mississippi.
Where does it end? When do we say enough is enough?
And a particularly mysterious item:
Center for End-of-Life Electronics, West Virginia.
$600,000 for end-of-life electronics. And I thought it's got to be something to do with either euthanasia or capital punishment.
We had a hard time.
A better electric chair or something.
We had a hard time. We thought it was computers for seniors. It wasn't. It was basically mining the parts that are still usable out of old computers. Recycling, yeah.
As they work their way through Congress, earmarks are so shrouded in secrecy, you often can't tell who sponsors them or who benefits from them.
The vast majority of them, we have no idea. Sometimes you'll see a press release when somebody's taking a victory lap. Some of them, they don't want anyone to know, ever, that they got that earmark, other than the lobbyists that they got it for. Can't we just say, we've gone too far? Can't we change this process?
It's a process the Founding Fathers warned us about from the very beginning.
Jefferson actually was very prescient about it and said it was going to be a mad scramble to see who can waste the most money in their state.
Leslie Page studies the workings of Congress for the nonpartisan group Citizens Against Government Waste. For lawmakers, she says, earmarks serve another function. You show me yours, I'll show you mine.
You want me to vote for your Medicare bill? What do you want for it? You know, and that actually has happened where they've been doing a lot of log rolling and horse trading to get bills through that they can't get through any other way.
To this moment, I have no idea who authored this earmark.
On the floor of the House, Jeff Flake has managed to smoke out the authors of a few earmarks.
I'm proud to stand up and take claim for this earmark.
But as you might expect, his efforts have gotten him in trouble with just about everybody.
Doggone it, I am not going to let somebody stand up here in total and complete ignorance and spout off a bunch of gobbledygook.
Fellow Republican Kurt Weldon of Pennsylvania let Flake have it for questioning $4 million to help the rotorcraft industry.
Don't stand up on the floor and make stupid allegations because you want a headline about cutting waste. This is not waste.
I noticed that 3 of the gentleman's 10 amendments are directed at New York. I don't know what you're angry about.
To Democrat Jose Serrano of New York, it was bad enough when Flake challenged $150,000 to fix the plumbing and wiring at some Italian markets in the Bronx.
I would argue that this is one cannoli the taxpayer doesn't want to take a bite out of.
But when Flake tried to cut $300,000 for the Bronx Council on the Arts, Serrano gave him the old Bronx cheer.
The more you get up on these, sir, the more I realize that you don't know what you're talking about. I make no excuses about the fact that I earmark dollars to go in the poorest congressional district in the nation, which is situated in the richest city on earth.
And so it goes. 13,000 earmarks this year alone, compared to only 4,000 a dozen years ago. And it's no accident that the explosive growth in earmarks parallels the explosive growth of lobbyists in Washington.
Many of the earmark request forms are actually filled out by lobbyists and then just turned in by the member staff to the Appropriations Committee.
And a good part of the time, as you say, it's just rubber stamped by the congressman.
Yes.
Put it through.
Yes. Unfortunately, yes.
And he's got his hand out for some campaign contributions, correct?
Well, yes. Many times, the same lobbyists who are requesting these earmarks will then host fundraisers for the member of Congress.
In the House, Flake reminded his colleagues of one lobbyist they'd just as soon forget.
Jack Abramoff reportedly referred to the Appropriation Committee as an earmark favor factory.
Abramoff pled guilty to fraud and corruption.
I have had great joy and great sorrow, and now I know great shame.
And there's the Duke, Randy Cunningham, the Republican congressman from California.
Hey, Lee, come on.
Ouch! Who did that increasingly popular dance, the perp walk, right into jail for taking bribes from defense contractors. Basically, you accuse him of selling earmarks.
He was. In fact, they found papers where he had listed how much he demanded for each earmark.
Without naming names, do you think there are other people still in the Congress who are doing that to one degree or another?
To one degree or another, yes. I don't believe there are any who are as blatant as Randy Cunningham was.
The story will continue after this.
So who is this Don Quixote tilting at his colleagues' windmills? Jeff Flake grew up in Snowflake, Arizona, a town named for two Mormon pioneers, Erastus Snow and Jeff's great-great-grandfather, Bill Flake, Snowflake.
He grew up as a cowboy. He did. He knows how to ride horses.
That's his uncle, Jake Flake. He says the cowboy life taught Jeff some skills he'd find handy as a politician.
He knows how to round up cattle and knows how to stay out of their way and knows how to get in and mix it up with them when he needs to.
And if there's a certain missionary zeal in Jeff Flake, it's no accident. In the Mormon tradition, as a young man, he did missionary work in Africa. Did your years, a few years you spent as a missionary, shape you in any way as a politician?
Yes. For one, I think as a missionary, you got to be stubborn and you got to try to be persuasive.
He represents a fast-growing Sunbelt state that, ironically, owes its modern existence to the billions in federal dollars spent to move water from the Colorado River to the cities. A fact his opponents often remind him of. Flake counters that the Central Arizona Water Project wasn't an earmark and was openly debated.
The truth is, I don't think there was any project that was under more scrutiny, that took more years of authorization and debates and open debates, nothing in secrecy. And that's how it should be.
Earmarks can be used wisely, but too often not. They are used unwisely, and that's what Jeff's trying to do away with.
Excellent theory, but in practice, when Uncle Jake, who's an Arizona state senator, wanted $3 million of federal money for a bridge over Tonto Creek, he didn't even bother to ask his nephew. He got his earmark from another congressman.
I think it's something that we legitimately need and deserve, but the only way we have to get them now is by earmarks.
And largely because of Jeff Flake's refusal to trade in earmarks, 3 out of the 5 mayors in his home district opposed his re-election 2 years ago.
They said he's not bringing home the bacon, let's get rid of him. And but they found out quickly that You know, for every one who stops me on the street and says, why don't you get money for this museum or this library? You know, you have 100 saying, attaboy, you know, keep at it.
And this November, he's so popular, the Democrats aren't even opposing him.
When we take money from the taxpayers and spend it on a teapot museum or on the Punxsutawney Weather Museum.
Keeping at it on the House floor, Flake mentions Punxsutawney, the home of that annual ritual, Groundhog Day. It's something the gentleman from Arizona can relate to, as time and again he rises to demand certain earmarks be cut.
Why the federal government is funding this, I just don't know.
39 times he tries, and 39 times he's voted down with a vengeance.
The noes have it.
The noes have it.
The amendment is lost.
You're lost on every one of them.
Okay.
Why continue? Why stay with it?
Well, somebody's got to do something. And so,
but you've tried everything. You've tried to embarrass them. They're unembarrassable, correct?
We're tough to shame. I've found that out. It's very tough to shame us anymore. They're very vague as to what they're actually funding.
Jeff Flake's story is a familiar one, immortalized 67 years ago in the film Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Jimmy Stewart, the young idealist who runs up against the real Washington world of fat cats, special interests, and rotten apples.
Your fight for the lost cause is harder than for any others.
In the movie, of course, Stewart eventually wins. In reality, says Jeff Flake, many of his fellow lawmakers would like to join his lost cause, if only the other guy would step forward first.
I have to tell you, there are a lot of them are sick of this game. They had higher aspirations when they were elected, and so privately they're cheering and saying, I hope he changes the system because I'm tired of it.